All right, so today we're going to continue talking about graphing in slope-intercept form. So as we talked a little bit about, remember slope-intercept form is the form y equals mx plus b, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. Now remember, we write the y-intercept a lot of times as a point, 0, comma, whatever the y value is. Just as added information, the x and y here, guys, are just another point on our line. Okay? All right, so let's go to looking at how do we graph these. So when we're looking at this, we have some steps to pick out the information we need. Okay? So we're going to start with identifying your slope and your y-intercept. So that m and that b. M is always going to be that number that's in front of the x, that's multiplying to x. So in this case, okay, my m is right there, -2/3. And I highly suggest, especially for the first little while, you take the time and actually write your m and your b. What are they? Okay, my b in this case is the number that's adding or subtracting, depending on which. Okay, it's either adding or subtracting to the x. So in this case, the +4 is adding to x. So my b, or my y-intercept, is a +4. Or we could say the 0.04. All right, so now that we've got those two pieces of information picked out, we know what they are. Okay. Well, then I'm going to plot my y-intercept. Okay, so my y-intercept was my b, which is the 0.04. So starting from the center of my graph here, okay, I'm going to go up and put a dot at 4. So now that I've got my y-intercept plotted, I'm going to use my slope, which remember, slope is rise over run. And I'm going to determine any other points I can pick out on this line. So the top number of my slope is always my rise. So in this case, it's -2. And my run is the bottom number, which is 3. So from here, I'm going to use that. And I'm going to go from my y-intercept. I'm going to go down 2. And I'm going to run 3. Now I went down because it was a -2. And I'm going to do this a couple times till I have several additional points, just to make sure I can easily draw a straight line. After I've done that, I'm going to connect my points with a line. And I'm a little off, but that's okay for this. So let's look at the next one. I've got y equals -3 plus x over 2. Okay, well, we need to pick out our slope and our y-intercept. This one's going to be a little trickier because it's not written in our typical standard slope-intercept form. So I'm going to rewrite it a minute. So it's going to be y is equal to, I want my x first, so I'm going to flip my x and my -3. X over 2 and -3, sorry. So x over 2 minus 3. Well, now we're looking at this, well, what is my m? Okay, don't be confused and go, well, it's 2, because it's the number dividing by x. Okay, dividing is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the number that's multiplying. So another way to rewrite this slope here, okay, is to write it y is equal to 1/2 x. minus 3. Anytime you have a number dividing your x, you can take it as a fraction 1 over that number, okay? It'll make it a little easier for you to work these out. All right, so my m is 1/2. My b, or my y-intercept, is the point 0, -3. Now you're going to see me write the y-intercept as a point most times, and I want you to do this because remember that is a point on your line. It's not just a number. All right, so I'm going to plot that point first. So starting from the center of my graph here, and I'm going to go down to -3. From there, I'm going to use my slope, which is 1/2. So my rise is 1, my run is 2. Up 1, over 2. Up 1, over 2. And again, I'm going to do this till I have run out of room. Now, let's say I want to keep doing a few more points. Since I can't keep going right, I'm going to go back to my y-intercept and I'm going to go down and to the left. Notice this still makes our line nice and straight without losing. And then once we've got all the points we want, we connect our dots. All right, so what type of slope do I have? Is it positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Well, in this case, it's a positive slope. Okay, it's a positive slope. What was my slope? It was 1/2. Okay. What was my y-intercept? Well, that was the point. Okay, that was the point. So my y-intercept was the point 0, -3. And where do I find the x-intercept? Remember, y-intercept's on the y-axis, x-intercept's on the x-axis. So it is this point right here, which is the point 6, 0. So let's look at our next one. I've got y equals x minus 4. So what is my m and what is my b? Well, I can easily pick out my b, right? It's the -4. 0, -4. Okay? My m, well, what is my m? What number is multiplying there to x? So remember, my m is that invisible 1. Okay, so we're going to start by plotting our y-intercept. So we go to our center of our graph. Our y-intercept is 0, -4. So that means I'm going to go down and put a dot at -4. Now I need my rise and my run. Well, my slope is 1, right? So I know my rise is 1, but what is my run? So how would I write this as a fraction? Remember, all whole numbers can be written as a fraction over 1. So in this case, 1 over 1. So my rise is 1 and my run is 1. So this tells me I'm going to go up 1 over 1. And that's where my next dot's going to be. And I'm going to do this several times. I like to make sure I've got nice points, several points to work these out, to draw the line. And then from there, just connect your dots. Oof. My screen does say that, okay. All right, so what type of slope do we have? Positive. So on this one, we have a positive. What was my slope? It was 1. Okay, what is my x-intercept? Where does it cross the x-axis? It crosses the x-axis at 4, 0. Okay, y-intercept crosses at 0, -4. All right, I'm going to do one more like this, and then we'll talk about a couple special cases. All right, so my equation is y equals -2x. So let's start off with, what is my slope? What's multiplying to x in this case? -2. I'm going to write it as a fraction, and that would be -2 over 1. Remember, any whole number can be written over 1. What is my y-intercept? Well, what's adding to x? There isn't anything, right? So anytime I have this case, my y-intercept is 0. Okay, so that tells me I'm going to put a dot at the very center of my graph. Okay, and then I'm going to use my rise, which is a -2, and my run, which is 1. Because remember, a whole number can be written as a fraction as that number over 1. All right, so this tells me from my y-intercept, I'm going to go down 2, right 1. Then I'm going to go down 2, right 1. And again, one more time, down 2, right 1. And then I'm going to connect my points. All right, so on this one I have what type of slope? It was a negative slope. Okay, my graph shows that, right? Down from left to right. My slope was -2. Well, what is my x-intercept? Where does it cross the x-axis? Point was 0. And my y-intercept was 0, 0 as well. All right, so let's talk about those two special cases. What happens when I have y equals 3? Well, where's my x? I don't have one, right? So in a case like this, I don't have an x, which means I don't have a slope. So it's one of two types. It's either 0 or undefined. Okay? If it's y equals a number, well then I could write this as y equals 0x plus 3. So my slope in this case is 0. Okay, which makes my y-intercept the point 0, 3. So that means from the center, I'm going to go up to 3 and put a dot. Now what does this mean for my slope? Okay, well my rise is 0, right? And my run is 1. So that just means I'm not going up, I'm just going left and right. Okay, so my line will be horizontal. So my type of slope is a 0 slope. I'm not going to have an x-intercept because is this line ever going to cross the x-axis? No, it's parallel to it, so it won't cross it. But what is my y-intercept? It's the point 0, 3. All right, we have one last one. Now this is the one that you're just going to kind of have to memorize. Anytime you have x equals a number, okay, your slope is automatically undefined. And I'm just going to shorten this by writing UND. Okay, so it's undefined. Now, I'm not going to have a y-intercept either. But I do have an x-intercept on this one. And that's whatever the number is that x is equal to. Okay? So, this is the only time you will start on the x-axis. So I'm going to put a dot at 3 on the x-axis. Now, I have rise, but I don't have run. So anytime you have x equals, just know it is a vertical line through that number on the x-axis. So this is an undefined slope. I have an x-intercept of 3, 0, and I don't have a y-intercept because we will never cross the y-axis. All right, and that is graphing lines.